The lecture hall stretched out like an amphitheater carved from living crystal, its walls pulsing with a soft bioluminescent glow that shifted between azure and violet. 300 seats rose in perfect geometric tiers, each one occupied by beings from across the known galaxy. The Galactic Alliance Military Academy had become a melting pot of species, each bringing their own evolutionary advantages to the table. Some students had 4 arms, others possessed telepathic tendrils, and a few existed as pure energy contained within mechanical shells. Daniel Cross slipped through the main entrance 20 minutes late, his standard-issue academy uniform wrinkled and sporting what looked suspiciously like breakfast stains. His brown hair stuck up at odd angles, defying both gravity and the industrial-strength gel he'd hastily applied that morning, while other species moved with grace, befitting their advanced civilizations. Daniel stumbled over his own feet, muttering apologies as he squeezed past a crystalline being whose body chimed in annoyance. "Typical human," someone whispered in Galactic Standard, the universal language that somehow managed to sound condescending in every dialect. Daniel pretended not to hear. After 3 months at the academy, he'd grown used to the comments. Humans were the newest addition to the Galactic Alliance, having only achieved faster-than-light travel a mere 50 years ago. To species that had been traversing the cosmos for millennia, humanity was barely out of its cosmic diapers. At the center of the amphitheater, Instructor Krathor stood like a monument to evolutionary perfection, 7 feet tall, with skin that resembled polished obsidian and 4 eyes that could track multiple targets simultaneously. He commanded attention through sheer presence alone. His species, the Zalathi, had conquered space travel when Earth's humans were still figuring out agriculture. The instructor's reputation preceded him 40 years of teaching, 0 tolerance for incompetence, and an ego that could eclipse a small sun. "As I was saying before our latest interruption," Krathor's voice boomed, his 4 eyes swiveling to lock onto Daniel. "Today, we examine the pinnacle of ancient predecessor technology." Daniel tried to shrink into invisibility as he searched for an empty seat. The only one available was front and center, directly before Krathor's podium. Of course. He began his walk of shame down the stairs, each footfall echoing in the sudden silence. Krathor continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. The predecessors left behind countless artifacts when they transcended physical existence 10,000 years ago. Most have been cataloged, studied, and understood. But this... He gestured to a metallic cube resting on a cushion of anti-gravity fields. This has defied every attempt at comprehension. The box floated at eye level, roughly the size of a human head, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury. Strange symbols appeared and disappeared across its faces, never quite the same twice. It was beautiful and unsettling in equal measure. "They call it the Paradox Box," Krathor announced with evident pride. "For 4 centuries, the greatest minds of the Alliance have attempted to unlock its secrets. Mathematicians, physicists, archaeologists, even those blessed with psychic abilities. All have failed." A student with iridescent scales raised a tentacle. "What makes you so certain it can be opened, Instructor?" Krathor's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among his species. "Because, young Satharin, I have dedicated the last 20 years of my life to studying it, and I have made more progress than anyone before me." Daniel finally reached the front row, trying to navigate around Krathor's podium without drawing more attention. The instructor's eyes tracked him like targeting lasers. "I have identified 43 of its 56 unique symbol configurations," Krathor continued, his chest swelling with pride. "I estimate that within another decade, perhaps 2, I will achieve what no one else has managed. I will solve the Paradox Box." The class murmured appreciatively. Even Daniel had to admit it was impressive. 20 years on a single puzzle showed dedication that bordered on obsession. Some of my colleagues believe the box is merely decorative, Crathor said, waving a dismissive hand. Others think it's a prison for something dangerous. But I know better. The predecessors were beings of pure logic. Everything they created had purpose. This box is a test, a measure of worthiness. Only a mind of sufficient complexity and sophistication can hope to. Daniel wasn't really listening anymore. He was focused on trying to squeeze past the floating box without touching it. The anti-gravity cushion had drifted slightly into his path, and the last thing he needed was to accidentally bump into Crathor's life's work. He sucked in his stomach, turned sideways, and attempted to shimmy past. For a moment, it seemed he might make it. Then his backpack, overstuffed with textbooks he hadn't read, and snacks he definitely wasn't supposed to have in class, caught the edge of the anti-gravity field. Time seemed to slow. The box tilted. Daniel's hand shot out instinctively to steady it. His fingers made contact with the cool metal surface. And something clicked. Not metaphorically. The box literally clicked, a sound like tumblers falling into place inside an ancient lock. The flowing patterns on its surface suddenly snapped into perfect alignment, forming a coherent image for the first time in recorded history. Lines of light raced across its faces, converging at the corners. Daniel barely had time to process what was happening before the box unfolded. Not opened, unfolded. Like an origami flower blooming in fast forward, the cube transformed into something impossible. Faces became edges, edges became vertices, and vertices became doors into spaces that shouldn't exist. The transformation defied three-dimensional logic, yet somehow made perfect sense to Daniel's eyes. Inside, floating in a pocket of twisted space, was a small sphere of light that pulsed with the rhythm of a heartbeat. The lecture hall fell silent. 300 students and one instructor stared in absolute shock. Someone's stylus clattered to the floor, the sound explosively loud in the stillness. Daniel stood frozen, his hand still extended, his butt hovering inches above the chair he'd been trying to reach. He said eloquently. I think I broke it. Crathor's 4 eyes had gone completely white, a sign of extreme emotional distress in his species. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound emerged. When he finally found his voice, it came out as a strangled whisper. What did you do? I just touched it, Daniel said, pulling his hand back as if the box might bite. I swear, I barely even... The box suddenly snapped back into its cube form, as if it had never opened at all. But everyone had seen it. The impossible had happened. The paradox box, the unsolvable puzzle that had confounded generations of geniuses, had been opened by a human who hadn't even sat down yet. That's impossible, Crathor said, his voice rising. The calculations alone should have taken years. The pattern recognition, the symbolic manipulation, the mathematical proofs. I didn't do any of that, Daniel said helplessly. I just touched it. A laugh erupted from somewhere in the middle rows. Tarek, a Vraxian with copper-colored skin and a superiority complex the size of a small moon, was practically doubling over with mirth. 20 years. Instructor, 20 years of your life. And a human solved it by accident. The laughter spread like wildfire. Soon, half the class was in hysterics. The other half sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they'd witnessed. Crathor's skin had darkened to the color of coal, a sign of rage barely contained. Silence, he roared, and the laughter died instantly. This proves nothing. It was clearly a malfunction, a fluke. Then make it do it again, Tarek challenged, still grinning. If it was a malfunction, it should be repeatable. All eyes turned to Daniel, who wished very strongly that he could teleport, or turn invisible, or spontaneously combust. Any of those would be preferable to the current situation. Crathor's eyes narrowed to slits. Yes, he said slowly, his voice dripping with venom. Let's see the human do it again. He picked up the box with reverent care and held it out to Daniel. Go ahead, Mr. Cross. Show us how you accomplished in seconds what I couldn't achieve in decades. Daniel looked at the box like it might explode. I really don't think... Touch it, Crathor commanded. The entire class leaned forward. Daniel could feel 300 pairs of eyes, or equivalent sensory organs boring into him. He reached out slowly, his hand trembling slightly, and placed his palm flat against the box's surface. Nothing happened. Crathor's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. As I suspected, a mere... click. The box unfolded again, this time even more dramatically. It didn't just open. It bloomed like a geometric flower, each face splitting into smaller faces that split again, creating a fractal pattern that hurt to look at directly. The sphere of light at its center pulsed brighter, and for a moment, Daniel could have sworn he heard music, ancient and alien and hauntingly beautiful. This time, letters appeared in the air above the box, written in perfect galactic standard, "Welcome, Pattern Seeker." The box reassembled itself and fell silent. Crathor dropped it. Actually dropped it. The most valuable artifact in the Academy's possession clattered onto his podium, and he didn't even notice. His 4 eyes had locked onto Daniel with an expression that transcended mere anger and entered the realm of existential crisis. Class dismissed, he said in a hollow voice. Nobody moved. I said, class dismissed. The students scattered like startled birds, gathering their belongings in record time. Daniel tried to join the exodus, but Crathor's hand clamped down on his shoulder with grip strength that could crush steel. Not you, the instructor said. You stay. As the last student filed out, Daniel caught a glimpse of copper hair and violet eyes from the 3rd row. Lyra, the exchange student from the Altarian colonies. She was one of the few who hadn't laughed, and she was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Curiosity, concern. She paused at the door, seemed about to say something, then thought better of it and left. When they were alone, Crathor released Daniel's shoulder and began to pace. His movements were sharp, agitated, like a caged predator. Explain, he demanded. I can't, Daniel said honestly. I really can't. I just touched it, and it felt right, like finding the spot on your back that's been itching all day. I don't know how else to describe it. Do you have any idea what you've done? Crathor's voice was dangerously quiet. That box has been my life's work, my claim to academic immortality. And you, a barely evolved primate who probably can't even solve a basic quantum equation. You just... He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Daniel felt a flare of irritation. He'd been putting up with the condescension for months, but this was too much. Look, I'm sorry your box liked me better than you, but that's not my fault. Maybe if you spent less time assuming humans are inferior and more time actually paying attention, you'd have figured it out yourself. Crathor's eyes flashed dangerously. You dare! Yeah, I dare, Daniel shot back, surprising himself with his boldness. You want to know what I did? I didn't overthink it. I didn't spend 20 years creating elaborate theories. I just touched the thing like a normal person would touch any object. Maybe that's your problem. You're so busy being superior that you forgot how to be simple. The silence that followed was deafening. Crathor stared at him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Get out, he finally said. Daniel didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his backpack and headed for the door, but Crathor's voice stopped him at the threshold. This isn't over, Mr. Cross. I will discover how you did this. And when I do, when I prove it was nothing more than dumb luck, I will ensure that you and your entire species are expelled from this academy. Daniel turned back, meeting the instructor's 4-eyed gaze. Good luck with that, he said, and left. The corridor outside was empty, except for Lyra, who was leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. Up close, Daniel could see why she drew stares, even among the diverse student body. Her features were almost human, but her skin had a subtle luminescence, like moonlight on water. Her hair shifted between copper and gold depending on the angle, and her eyes were a shade of violet that didn't exist in the human spectrum. "That was either very brave or very stupid," she said. "Probably both," Daniel admitted, slumping against the opposite wall. "I'm dead. Aren't I Crathor's going to make my life hell?" "Without question," Lyra agreed. "But that's not what interests me." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "No!" She pushed off from the wall and stepped closer, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "I've been watching you since you arrived. You sleep through half your classes. Your grades are mediocre at best, and you seem to have no ambition whatsoever. Yet you just accomplished something that the greatest minds in the galaxy couldn't. How?" "I told Crathor the truth," Daniel said. "I don't know." "But you felt something," Lyra pressed. "When you touched it. What was it?" Daniel thought about it. Really thought about it for the first time. It was like the box was a question, and my mind automatically knew the answer. Not intellectually. More like how you know how to breathe, or how your heart knows how to beat. It was just obvious. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "Intuition," she breathed. "Pure, unfiltered intuition. Is that special?" She laughed. A sound like silver bells. "Daniel, most species evolved past intuition millions of years ago. We rely on logic, calculation, analysis. But humans, you're still connected to something primal. Something we've lost." "Great," Daniel said sarcastically. "We're cosmically primitive. That'll look great on my resume." "You don't understand," Lyra said, shaking her head. "That's not a weakness. It might be the greatest strength your species has." Before Daniel could respond, his communicator buzzed. He pulled it out and saw a message that made his stomach drop. "Report to the dean's office immediately." "And so it begins," Lyra said, reading over his shoulder. "Word travels fast here. By tomorrow, everyone in the academy will know what happened." "Fantastic," Daniel muttered. "Any advice?" Lyra considered for a moment. "Don't let them turn you into a lab rat. Whatever you did in there, whatever ability you have, it's yours. Don't let them take it from you." She started to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and Daniel, that thing about your grades being mediocre, that's going to have to change. If you're going to survive what's coming, you'll need to be better than mediocre. You'll need to be exceptional." "What's coming?" Daniel called after her. She glanced back with a smile that was equal parts sympathy and amusement. "Everyone will want to understand how you did it, and some of them won't ask nicely," as she disappeared around a corner. Daniel slumped against the wall and groaned. He'd come to the academy hoping to coast through, get a degree, and maybe open a restaurant somewhere quiet. Instead, he'd accidentally made himself the most interesting human in the galaxy. His communicator buzzed again. Another message from the dean's office, this one marked urgent. With a sigh, Daniel pushed off from the wall and started walking. Whatever happened next, he had a feeling his life was about to get a lot more complicated. The dean's office occupied the top floor of the academy's administrative spire, a building that seemed to defy several laws of physics. As Daniel rode the gravity lift up, he tried to calm his nerves. He'd never met Dean Averis personally, but the stories about her were legendary. She'd supposedly fought in 3 galactic wars, negotiated peace between species that had been enemies for millennia, and once stared down a black hole entity until it blinked first. That last one was probably exaggerated, but with aliens, you never knew. The lift opened into an anteroom that was stark and minimalist. All clean lines and subtle lighting. a secretary that appeared to be made entirely of geometric shapes that constantly rearranged themselves, looked up as he entered. "Daniel Cross," the being said in a voice like wind chimes. "You're expected. Please proceed." The doors to the inner office opened silently, revealing a space that was somehow both intimate and vast. The walls were transparent aluminum, offering a 360-degree view of the Academy grounds and the alien city beyond. The ceiling displayed a real-time map of local space, complete with shipping lanes and stellar phenomena. Dean Averis stood with her back to him, hands clasped behind her, looking out at the setting of the binary suns. She was K. Lauren, a species known for their longevity and wisdom. Her skin was the color of aged silver, and her hair, which flowed down to the floor, seemed to contain actual starlight. "Mr. Cross," she said without turning, "do you know why I accepted humans into this academy?" "No, ma'am," Daniel said, caught off guard by the question. "Your species applied for admission 17 times. They were rejected each time. Too primitive, the board said. Too emotional. Too unpredictable." She turned to face him, and Daniel saw that her eyes were like galaxies, literally containing swirling stars and nebulae. "I overruled them." "Why?" "Because in all my centuries of life, I've learned that the universe loves paradoxes. The weakest often become the strongest. The smallest can topple the mightiest. And the youngest—" She smiled slightly. "The youngest sometimes see what the ancient cannot." She gestured to a chair, and Daniel sat, feeling very much like a child called to the principal's office. "Tell me about the box," she said. Daniel recounted the event, trying to be as accurate as possible. Avaris listened without interrupting, her expression giving nothing away. "Instructor Crathor has already been here," she said when he finished. "He wants you expelled. He claims you cheated somehow, though he can't explain how. He also wants to subject you to a full neural scan to understand what happened." "And," Daniel asked, his mouth suddenly dry, "and I told him that if he can't figure out how a first-year human student solved his puzzle, perhaps he's not as brilliant as he thinks he is." Daniel blinked in surprise. "You defended me." "I stated a fact," Avaris corrected. "However, this situation is more complex than you realize. The paradox box wasn't just some archaeological curiosity. It was a test, placed here deliberately by parties unknown. The fact that you opened it has implications that extend far beyond bruising Crathor's ego." She touched a control on her desk, and a holographic display appeared between them. It showed the box, but also dozens of similar objects scattered across the galaxy. "These are all the known predecessor artifacts that remain unopened," she explained. 17 different species have claimed ownership of them. Wars have been fought over them. And now, word will spread that a human can open them. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. "You're saying I just made humanity a target?" "I'm saying you just made humanity very, very interesting," Avaris corrected. "Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing remains to be seen." She stood and walked to the window again. "I'm going to make you an offer, Mr. Cross. You can leave the academy tonight. I'll arrange safe passage back to Earth, and you can forget this ever happened. Live your quiet life. Open your restaurant. Be nobody special. Or you stay. You let us test you, understand you. You help us open the other artifacts. You become the key to unlocking secrets that have been hidden for 10,000 years." She turned to look at him. "But if you stay, your life will never be simple again. You'll be studied, challenged, possibly threatened. Some will worship you as a prophet. Others will hate you as an abomination." Daniel was quiet for a long moment, thinking. The smart choice was obvious. Run. Go home. Forget about alien puzzles and angry instructors and the weight of representing his entire species. But something held him back. The memory of the box opening, of that moment of perfect clarity, when everything just made sense. He'd felt more alive in that instant than he had in years. "If I stay," he said slowly, "I want conditions." Avaris raised an eyebrow. "Negotiate with me bold. What conditions?" "First, no invasive testing, no neural scans, no dissections, no weird experiments. You want to understand what I can do. We do it my way." "Acceptable." "Second, I want protection. If people are going to come after me, I want to know the Academy has my back." "That was always going to be the case." "Third," Daniel took a breath, "I want Krathor to leave me alone. No harassment. No trying to fail me. No revenge schemes." Avaris actually laughed, a sound like distant thunder. "I can't promise that. Krathor's pride has been wounded, and a wounded Zalathi is dangerous. But I will ensure he operates within Academy rules." Daniel considered, then nodded. "Then I'll stay." "Excellent." Avaris returned to her desk and pulled out a tablet. "Your first test will be tomorrow. We've had another artifact shipped in from the Centauri archives. We'll see if your ability with the box was a fluke or something more." "Great," Daniel said, trying not to sound as nervous as he felt. "Can't wait." As he stood to leave, Avaris called after him. "Mr. Cross, a word of advice. You're about to become the most famous human in the galaxy. Use that fame wisely." Daniel nodded and left, his mind spinning. As he exited the administrative building, he found a crowd waiting for him, students from every species, all staring, whispering, pointing. Some looked excited, others suspicious, a few openly hostile. He spotted Tarek in the crowd. The Vraxian's copper face split in a mocking grin. "Hey, Puzzle Boy," he called out. "Enjoy your 15 minutes of fame. When they figure out it was just dumb luck, you'll be back to being nobody." "Maybe," Daniel said, too tired to argue. "But at least I'll still be nobody who opened the unopenable box. What have you done lately?" The crowd oohed at the comeback, and Tarek's face darkened. "Watch yourself, human. You don't want me as an enemy." "I don't want you as anything," Daniel replied, pushing through the crowd. "I just want to go to my room and sleep." But sleep would have to wait. His communicator was buzzing non-stop with messages. Interview requests from news outlets across the galaxy. Congratulations from the human embassy. Death threats from anonymous sources. His quiet life was officially over. As he finally reached his dormitory, he found Lyra waiting by his door. "Rough day?" she asked. "The roughest," Daniel admitted, fumbling with his keycard. "And apparently, it's just the beginning." "I brought food," she said, holding up a container. "Figured you might have missed dinner." Daniel's stomach growled in response, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since his hastily grabbed breakfast. "You're an angel, or whatever the Altarian equivalent is." "We don't have angels," Lyra said, following him into his room. "We have something called Lightweavers, but they're actually quite nasty. Angels sound better." Daniel's room was small and sparse. Standard student accommodation. A bed, a desk, a bathroom, and a window overlooking the quad. He'd barely personalized it in his 3 months at the academy, and now he wondered if he ever would. Lyra unpacked the food, while Daniel collapsed into his desk chair. It was some kind of stew that smelled amazing and tasted even better. "Why are you being nice to me?" Daniel asked between bites. "Everyone else seems to either hate me or want to dissect me." "Because you're interesting," Lyra said simply. "And not in the way everyone else thinks. They see you as a curiosity, a puzzle to be solved. But I think you're something else." "What?" "Proof that evolution isn't always about becoming more complex. Sometimes it's about staying connected to something essential." She leaned against his desk, studying him. "Your species terrifies the galaxy, you know." Daniel nearly choked on his stew. "We do why we're the newbies. We barely have faster-than-light travel. Half our technology is borrowed from other species. Exactly, Lyra said. You've been in space for 50 years, and you're already at the Academy. Do you have any idea how fast that is? Most species take centuries just to stabilize after discovering FTL. But humans, you just adapt, you learn, you integrate. And now this thing with the box? You think it means something, Daniel said. I think the predecessors left those artifacts for a reason, Lyra replied. And I think they've been waiting for someone like you to find them. Someone like me, or humans in general. That, Lyra said with a smile, is what we're going to find out. She stood to leave, but paused at the door. Tomorrow's test. Don't overthink it. Whatever you did today, it wasn't intellectual. It was instinctive. Trust that. After she left, Daniel sat in the dark, looking out at the alien constellations. Somewhere out there were more artifacts, more puzzles, more secrets waiting to be unlocked. And apparently, he was the key. He thought about Dean Averis's offer. He could have gone home, should have gone home. But something had changed when he touched that box. He'd felt a connection to something vast and ancient, something that had been waiting patiently for someone to understand its language. His communicator buzzed again. Another message, this one from an unknown sender. Just 4 words, "You're not the first." Daniel frowned, typing back, "Who is this?" No response. He tried tracking the message, but it had been routed through so many proxies that the trail went cold. Someone out there knew something about humans and the artifacts. Someone who didn't want to be found. Yet, Daniel saved the message and made a mental note to investigate later. For now, he needed sleep. Tomorrow would bring new tests, new challenges, and probably new enemies. But also, maybe new revelations about what humans really were in the grand scheme of the cosmos. As he drifted off to sleep, he couldn't shake the feeling that opening the box had started something that couldn't be stopped. The universe had been waiting for humanity to prove itself, and somehow, he'd become the proof. The question was proof of what? The testing chamber was nothing like Daniel had expected. Instead of sterile white walls and intimidating machinery, it looked more like a museum gallery. Artifacts from across the galaxy lined the walls in climate-controlled cases, each one tagged with its origin and the number of failed attempts to unlock it. The morning light from the binary suns streamed through tall windows, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. Daniel stood in the center of the room, surrounded by what felt like half the Academy's faculty. Dean Averis was there, of course, along with several department heads he didn't recognize. Crathor lurked in the corner like a storm cloud, his 4 eyes never leaving Daniel's face. The only somewhat friendly face was Lyra, who had somehow talked her way into being present as a student observer. The artifact we've selected for today's test comes from the Andromeda excavation, Dean Averis announced, gesturing to a sealed containment unit being wheeled in by 2 technicians. It was discovered 60 years ago in a predecessor temple. Like the Paradox box, it has resisted all attempts at activation. The technicians carefully removed the artifact from its containment field. It was beautiful and strange. A crystalline dodecahedron that seemed to contain an entire galaxy within its facets. Stars swirled in its depths, and occasionally, Daniel could swear he saw planets orbiting in fast forward. "Mr. Cross," Averis said, "whenever you're ready." Daniel approached the artifact slowly, aware of every eye in the room tracking his movement. The pressure was completely different from yesterday's accident. This was deliberate, expected, observed. His hands were already sweating. He reached out, trying to recapture that feeling from before, that sense of rightness. His fingers made contact with the cool crystal surface. Nothing happened. He could feel Crathor's satisfaction radiating from across the room. Daniel closed his eyes, trying to block out the watching crowd, trying to find that instinctive understanding. Still nothing. "Perhaps we should give him a moment," Lyra suggested. He's under considerable pressure. The predecessors wouldn't have cared about pressure, Crathor said coldly. If he truly has this supposed ability, it should work regardless of circumstances. Daniel pulled his hand back, frustrated. The crystal sat there, inert and mocking. He walked around it, studying it from different angles, but it remained stubbornly unchanged. "I don't understand," he muttered. "Yesterday it was so clear." "Yesterday was a fluke," Crathor announced, triumph creeping into his voice. "As I predicted, the humans simply had a random lucky interaction with a malfunctioning artifact." "The test isn't over," Avaris said calmly, though Daniel could see concern in her galaxy eyes. Daniel tried again, and again. For 20 minutes, he touched, prodded, and examined the crystal from every angle. Nothing. The assembled academics began to murmur among themselves. Some looked disappointed, others vindicated. "This is embarrassing," someone whispered, not quite quietly enough. Daniel's frustration was mounting. He could feel the weight of expectation, the hope of humanity's reputation, all bearing down on him. Maybe Crathor was right. Maybe yesterday had been a cosmic joke, the universe's way of laughing at humanity's pretensions. Then he noticed something. The crystal's internal galaxy wasn't random. The stars were moving in a pattern, a slow dance that repeated every few minutes. And there, in the center, was a dark spot. Not a black hole, but an absence. Something missing. Without thinking, Daniel placed both hands on the crystal and closed his eyes. But instead of trying to open it, he listened. Not with his ears, but with something deeper. The crystal was singing, a frequency beyond sound, and it was incomplete. A symphony, missing a note. He began to hum. It wasn't a tune he knew, just a vibration that felt right. The pitch shifted up and down as he searched for the missing frequency. The assembled observers fell silent, watching in bewilderment as the human student hummed at the ancient artifact. Then he found it, the note that completed the harmony. The crystal blazed with light. The internal galaxy suddenly expanded, projecting out into the room in a spectacular holographic display. Stars swirled around the observers. Planets traced their orbits through the air, and at the center, where the dark spot had been, a message appeared in ancient predecessor script. But Daniel could read it, not the symbols themselves, but their meaning, flowing directly into his consciousness. "The children who sing the silent songs shall inherit the gardens of thought," he said aloud, not realizing he was speaking. The display held for a moment longer, then collapsed back into the crystal, which now glowed with a soft, steady light. The room erupted. Half the observers were frantically taking notes, others were shouting questions, and Crathor looked like he might spontaneously combust. Dean Avaris raised a hand for silence. "Mr. Cross," she said carefully, "how did you know to do that?" Daniel shrugged helplessly. "I didn't know. I just felt it. The crystal was lonely. It needed its song completed." "Lonely," Dr. Emir, the head of xenopsychology, stepped forward. "You're anthropomorphizing an inanimate object." "No," Daniel said, then frowned. "Maybe I don't know how to explain it. It's like, imagine you're looking at a painting with a hole in it. You can't see what was there, but you can feel what should be there. The shape of the absence tells you what's missing." "Intuitive pattern completion," Lyra said suddenly. "He's not analyzing the artifacts. He's empathizing with them." "That's ridiculous," Crathor snarled. "These are machines, not living beings. They don't have feelings to empathize with." "But they were created by beings who did," Lyra countered. "The predecessors encoded these artifacts with something that transcends pure logic. Something that requires intuition to unlock." The debate might have continued, but Daniel's communicator buzzed with an emergency alert. Then another, then dozens, from every student and faculty member in the room. Dean Averis checked her device, and her expression darkened. "We have a problem." She activated the room's main display, showing a news feed from the Galactic Information Network. The headline made Daniel's stomach drop. "Human student unlocks predecessor secrets. Multiple governments demand access." The feed showed recordings from yesterday's classroom incident, obviously taken by a student, along with wild speculation about what it meant. The comment section was a war zone of opinions, ranging from those calling Daniel humanity's greatest asset to others demanding he be studied for the good of all species. "It gets worse," Avaris said, switching to another feed. "The hegemony of Carr has officially requested that Mr. Cross be transferred to their research facilities. The Synthetic Collective has offered to buy him, and the warrior caste of Vrax has declared that no single species should have monopoly access to predecessor technology." "Buy me," Daniel said, his voice cracking slightly. "They want to buy me." "The synthetics view everything as a transaction," Avaris explained. "They've offered quite a substantial sum." "How substantial?" Daniel asked, then quickly added, "Not that I'm considering it." "Enough to fund the Academy for the next century," Avaris replied dryly. Before anyone could respond to that, the door to the testing chamber burst open. Tarek strode in, followed by a dozen other Vraxian students. They were all wearing combat training gear, which was technically against regulations outside the combat halls. "Instructor Krathor," Tarek said formally, though his eyes were fixed on Daniel. "We invoke the right of challenge." The room went very quiet. Daniel had no idea what that meant, but from everyone's expressions, it wasn't good. "You can't be serious," Lyra said, stepping protectively closer to Daniel. "He's a first-year student. He hasn't had combat training." "The right of challenge doesn't discriminate based on experience," Tarek said with a nasty smile. "Any student who brings glory to the Academy can be challenged to prove they deserve it. We contest that the humans' accomplishments are mere chance, not skill." Krathor's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "The right of challenge is an ancient tradition. I cannot deny it." "I can," Dean Averis said coldly. "Mr. Cross is under protective observation." "With respect, Dean," Krathor said, not sounding respectful at all. "Academy tradition supersedes administrative protection. Unless you're prepared to declare that humans are too weak to participate in our customs." It was a trap, and everyone knew it. If Avaris protected Daniel, it would confirm every prejudice about humans being the weak newcomers who needed special treatment. If she didn't, Daniel would be thrown into combat with trained fighters who clearly wanted to hurt him. "What kind of combat?" Daniel asked, surprised by how calm his voice sounded. "Hand to hand," Tarek said. "First to yield or be incapacitated loses. If you lose, you publicly admit that your success with the artifacts was luck, not ability." "And if I win?" Tarek laughed. "You won't." Daniel looked around the room. Krathor was practically gleaming with anticipation. The other faculty looked uncomfortable but weren't intervening. Lyra was shaking her head minutely, trying to warn him off. And Dean Averis. The dean was watching him with those galaxy eyes, and he realized she was leaving the choice to him. She could protect him, but at a cost to humanity's standing. Or he could fight and probably lose. But at least humanity would have fought. "I need an hour," Daniel said. "For what?" Tarek scoffed. "To run away." "To prepare," Daniel replied. "You've been training for combat since you arrived. I get 1 hour to get ready. That's fair, right?" Tarek shrugged. 1 hour. The combat hall. Don't be late, or you forfeit by default." The Vraxians filed out, leaving behind an atmosphere thick with tension. As soon as they were gone, Lyra grabbed Daniel's arm. "Are you insane? Vraxians are born warriors. Their bone density is 3 times that of humans. Tarek could literally break you in half." "Probably," Daniel agreed. "But I don't think I have a choice." "There's always a choice," Dean Averis said. I can shut this down and prove that humans need protection. Daniel shook his head. No, but I could use some advice. How do I fight someone who's bigger, stronger, and better trained than me? You don't, Crathor said flatly. You lose with whatever dignity you can muster. Helpful, Daniel muttered. Anyone else? Vraxians have a weakness, a new voice said. Everyone turned to see Dr. Marcus Webb, the only other human faculty member at the academy. He taught comparative anatomy, and Daniel had never taken his class. Dr. Webb, Averis acknowledged. Please continue. Vraxians evolved on a high-gravity world, Webb explained, approaching Daniel. They're incredibly strong, but that strength comes at a cost. Their reaction time is actually slower than humans. They're built for power, not speed. And their joints, particularly the knees and elbows, are vulnerable to lateral pressure. You're suggesting I fight dirty? Daniel asked. I'm suggesting you fight smart, Webb corrected. This isn't about honor or proving who's stronger. It's about showing that humans can survive through adaptability. I can help, Lyra said suddenly. I've studied Vraxian combat forms. I can show you their patterns, their tells. That would be cheating, Crathor protested. No, Avaris said firmly. That would be preparation. Something I'm sure Tarek has had years of. The next hour was a blur. Lyra demonstrated Vraxian combat stances, while Dr. Webb pointed out vulnerabilities. Daniel tried to absorb it all, but his mind kept wandering to the artifacts. The way they felt when he touched them. The sense of connection, of understanding. You're not listening, Lyra said, frustrated. After Daniel failed to dodge her demonstration strike for the 5th time. I'm trying, Daniel said. But this isn't how I think. I can't memorize combat patterns and counter moves. My brain doesn't work that way. Then how does it work? Webb asked. Daniel thought about it. I need to understand why. Why does Tarek want to fight me? What's he really after? Glory, Lyra said immediately. He wants to be the one who proved humans are weak. No, Daniel said slowly. That's what he says he wants. But there's something else. The way he looked at me yesterday, after I opened the box. It wasn't just mockery. It was fear. Fear. Webb frowned. Of what? Of becoming irrelevant, Daniel said, the realization clicking into place. The Vraxians pride themselves on being warriors, on solving problems through strength. But if the future is about intuition, about empathy, about understanding rather than conquering, where does that leave them? That's very philosophical, Lyra said. But it won't help you avoid getting your skull crushed. Won't it? Daniel asked. What if I don't fight him at all? Then you lose by default, Webb pointed out. Not if I make him not want to fight, Daniel said. The same way I understood the artifacts. Find what's missing, what's needed. That's insane, Lyra said. Tarek isn't a puzzle to be solved. He's a 200-pound killing machine who wants to hurt you. Everyone's a puzzle, Daniel said with more confidence than he felt. You just have to find the right frequency. The combat hall was packed. Word had spread throughout the academy, and students from every species had gathered to watch. The betting was running heavily against Daniel, with odds of 50-1 for him to survive more than 30 seconds. The arena itself was a circular platform, 20 meters across, with energy barriers to prevent combatants from falling off the edge. Tarek was already there, warming up with movements that looked like a cross between martial arts and interpretive dance. His copper skin gleamed with some kind of oil that would make him harder to grip. Daniel entered to a mix of cheers and jeers. The human contingent, all 40 of them, had grouped together in one section, looking worried. He spotted familiar faces from his classes, most looking at him with expressions that said, "Better you than me." The rules are simple, Crathor announced, having somehow appointed himself referee. No weapons, no external aids, no lethal strikes. Victory by submission, incapacitation, or ring out. Combatants ready. Tarek dropped into a combat stance that looked like a coiled spring ready to explode. Daniel stood there, hands at his sides, trying to calm his racing heart. "I'm ready," Tarek growled. "Mr. Cross," Crathor prompted, clearly enjoying this. "Before we start," Daniel said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I have a question for Tarek." "Stalling won't help you," Tarek snarled. "Not stalling. Just curious. What happens after you beat me?" Tarek blinked, thrown by the question. "What? You beat me, prove humans are weak. Then what tomorrow? I'll still be the only one who can open the artifacts. Beating me up doesn't change that." "It proves you're not special," Tarek said. "That any human could do what you did." "Okay," Daniel said. "So bring another human up here. Let them try to open an artifact. Prove your theory." The crowd murmured. It was a logical point. Tarek's face darkened. "That's not how this works. You fight or you forfeit." "I'm not forfeiting," Daniel said. "I'm just trying to understand what you're really fighting for. Because it's not about me, is it? It's about you." "Enough talk," Tarek charged. He moved faster than Daniel expected, crossing the distance in 2 bounds. Daniel barely managed to dive sideways, rolling awkwardly as Tarek's fist cracked the platform where he'd been standing. "See?" Tarek shouted to the crowd. "He runs like a coward." Daniel got to his feet, breathing hard. "I'm not running, I'm thinking. Something you might try sometime." Tarek charged again. This time, Daniel didn't dodge far enough. A glancing blow caught his shoulder and spun him around, sending him skidding across the platform. Pain exploded down his arm. The human section groaned. The Vraxians cheered. "Is that all you've got?" Daniel asked, getting shakily to his feet. "My grandmother hits harder than that." It was bravado, and everyone knew it. That glancing blow had nearly dislocated his shoulder. A direct hit would end this fight instantly. But something strange was happening. As Tarek stalked toward him, Daniel found himself seeing patterns. Not in the Vraxian's movements, but in his emotions. The way his breathing hitched when he was about to attack. The slight lean to the left that telegraphed his preferred striking side. The tension in his jaw that showed he was more angry than confident. Tarek attacked again, a combination of strikes that should have demolished Daniel. But Daniel wasn't there. Not dodging, exactly, but flowing around the attacks like water around stones. He wasn't thinking about it, wasn't calculating angles and trajectories. He was just moving where Tarek wasn't. "Stop dancing and fight," Tarek roared, frustration building. "Why?" Daniel asked, continuing to evade. "So you can prove you're stronger. Everyone already knows that. You're not proving anything except that you're afraid." "I'm not afraid of you." "Not of me," Daniel said, ducking under a wild swing. "Of them." He gestured to the crowd, specifically the non-Vraxian sections. "You're afraid that if humans can do something Vraxians can't, then maybe strength isn't enough anymore. Maybe the galaxy is changing, and you're being left behind." Tarek's attacks became wilder, more emotional. Daniel continued to evade, but he was tiring. He couldn't keep this up much longer. "You want to know a secret," Daniel said, panting. "I am weak. I am cowardly. I did get lucky with the artifacts. But that's what makes humans special. We know we're weak, so we have to be clever. We know we're small, so we have to work together. We know we're new, so we have to learn fast." Tarek paused, breathing heavily. "What's your point?" "My point is, you're fighting the wrong battle. You're trying to prove humans aren't special by being stronger. But our special trait isn't strength. It's adaptation. It's seeing what others miss. It's finding connections where others see divisions." Daniel took a step forward, and Tarek actually took a step back. "You want to beat me, fine. One hit from you and I'm done. But what does that prove, that a warrior can beat a psychology student? Congratulations. Meanwhile, I'll keep opening artifacts, keep solving puzzles, keep doing the thing that you can't. And every time I do, you'll remember this moment. The moment you proved that strength isn't everything. The combat hall had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Tarek's hands clenched and unclenched. His whole body was trembling with rage, or something else. "You think you're better than us?" "No," Daniel said softly. "I think we're all scared. Every species in this academy. We're all trying to prove we belong, that we matter, that we won't be forgotten when the next phase of galactic civilization begins. You fight. I solve puzzles. Others build or compute or create. We're all just trying to leave our mark." He spread his arms, leaving himself completely open. "So, hit me if you need to. Prove you're stronger. But know that tomorrow, when they bring in the next artifact, they won't call for the strongest. They'll call for me. And maybe, instead of being enemies, we could figure out how a warrior and a puzzle solver could work together. Because I have a feeling what's coming will need both." Tarek stood frozen for a long moment. The entire arena held its breath. Then, without warning, he struck. But not at Daniel. His fist slammed into the platform beside him, cracking the reinforced material. The sound echoed through the silent hall. "This isn't over," Tarek said. But the fire had gone out of his voice. "You're still weak." "Yes," Daniel agreed. "I am." Tarek turned and walked off the platform. The energy barriers flickered off. The fight was over, ended not by submission or knockout, but by something else entirely. The crowd didn't know how to react. There was no clear winner, no dramatic finish. Just two students, one walking away, the other standing alone in the center of the platform. Then, someone started clapping. Slowly. Daniel looked up to see Dina Vera standing in the administrative box, applauding slowly and deliberately. Others joined in, first the humans, then spreading through the crowd. Not everyone. Krathor looked like he'd swallowed something particularly unpleasant. And many of the Vraxians seemed confused. But enough. Daniel climbed down from the platform on shaky legs. Lyra was there to meet him, along with Dr. Webb. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen," Lyra said. "Probably both," Daniel admitted, then winced as his shoulder reminded him of Tarek's glancing blow. "Did it work?" "You avoided a fight through psychological manipulation," Webb said. "You turned a combat challenge into a philosophical debate. I'm not sure if that's genius or insanity." "In my experience," Dina Vera said, approaching them. "The two are often indistinguishable." She studied Daniel for a moment. "You realize what you've done, don't you? You've shown that humans don't play by the same rules as everyone else. That will make you either very valuable or very dangerous, depending on who's asking." "I just didn't want to get punched," Daniel said. "No," Avaris said. "You wanted to understand. That's what you do, isn't it? Not solve puzzles, but understand them. Understand what they need, what they're missing." She pulled out a data pad. "I've received 6 more requests for your services, just in the time you've been in the arena. 3 museums want you to examine their collections. 2 colonies claim to have found new predecessor sites. And 1 very interesting message from someone claiming to have information about why humans can do what you do." "Who?" Daniel asked. "They didn't say. But they knew about your ability before today's test. They knew you would open the crystal." She handed him the pad. "They want to meet. Tonight. Alone." Daniel read the message. It was brief. "The gardens of thought have many gardeners. Some plant, some tend, some harvest. Humans were meant to bloom. Meet me at the old observatory. Come alone, or don't come at all." "It's obviously a trap," Lyra said immediately. "Obviously," Avaris agreed. "The question is, set by whom and for what purpose?" Daniel stared at the message. Particularly the phrase, "gardens of thought." The same words the crystal had shown him. Whoever this was, they knew about the predecessors. Maybe more than anyone else in the galaxy. I'm going, he said. No, you're not, Lyra said. You nearly got killed today, and that was in a controlled environment. This is someone unknown, asking you to come alone to an isolated location. It's literally the definition of a bad idea. Everything about my life right now is a bad idea, Daniel pointed out. But this person knows something about the artifacts, about humans, about why I can do what I do. Then we inform security. Webb suggested. Have them handle it. And scare off the only lead we have. Daniel shook his head. No, I'm going. Then I'm coming with you, Lyra said firmly. The message said alone. The message said a lot of things. Doesn't mean we have to listen to all of them. Dean Averis watched this exchange with something that might have been amusement. If you're determined to do this, Mr. Cross, at least take precautions. Wear a tracker. Have backup standing by. Don't be a complete fool. I thought being a fool was humanity's special trait, Daniel said with a weak smile. Perhaps, Averis said, but even fools can be careful fools. As they left the combat hall, Daniel noticed Tarek standing with a group of Raxians near the exit. Their eyes met for a moment. Tarek didn't nod, didn't acknowledge what had happened, but he didn't look away either. It wasn't friendship, not even close, but it was something, a recognition, perhaps, that they were all struggling with the same questions, just in different ways. The afternoon sun was setting as Daniel made his way back to his dorm to prepare for the night's meeting. His shoulder ached, his head was spinning from everything that had happened, and he had no idea what he was walking into. But for the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt like he understood his purpose. He wasn't here to be a warrior or a scholar or a diplomat. He was here to be a bridge, to understand what others couldn't, to see patterns in chaos, to find harmony in discord. The predecessors had left their artifacts for a reason. They were tests, yes, but not of intelligence or strength. They were tests of intuition, of empathy, of the ability to complete incomplete patterns. And somehow, humans had evolved exactly the right kind of minds to pass those tests. The question was, what happened when all the tests were passed? What were the predecessors preparing the galaxy for? Daniel had a feeling he was about to find out. The old observatory sat on the Academy's northern border, like a forgotten relic, its dome cracked and weathered by centuries of twin-sun exposure. Once, it had been the pride of the institution, but advances in quantum telescopy had rendered it obsolete. Now, it served mainly as a storage facility and occasional midnight rendezvous point for students who thought they were being rebellious. Daniel approached carefully, his tracker, hidden beneath his collar and his communicator, set to emergency broadcast. Lyra was positioned 100 meters away, hidden behind a maintenance shed despite his protests. They'd argued for an hour about whether she should come at all, finally compromising on her staying close, but out of sight. The main door was ajar, darkness seeping out like spilled ink. Daniel pushed it open, wincing at the prolonged creak that announced his arrival. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the peculiar smell of abandoned technology slowly degrading. "You came," a voice said from the shadows. "I wasn't certain you would." A figure stepped into the pale moonlight streaming through the cracked dome. Daniel's breath caught. The being was unlike any species he'd encountered at the academy. Tall and impossibly thin, with skin that seemed to shift between solid and translucent, revealing hints of something crystalline beneath. Its eyes were ancient, older than anything should be. "You're a predecessor," Daniel breathed. "No," the being said with what might have been amusement. "The predecessors are gone, ascended beyond physical form 10 millennia ago. I am something else, a keeper, a guardian of what they left behind." "I didn't know keepers existed," Daniel said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We don't, officially. We were created by the predecessors in their final days, given just enough of their knowledge to maintain their legacy. There are only a few of us left, scattered across the galaxy. Waiting. Waiting for what? For you, the keeper said simply. Or rather, for your species. We've been waiting for humans since before you existed. Daniel felt his knees go weak. He found a dusty crate and sat down heavily. That's impossible. Humans only evolved recently, cosmically speaking. Evolution can be guided, the keeper said, moving with an fluid grace that seemed to defy physics. The predecessors saw the patterns of what would come. They knew that eventually, a species would arise with the exact characteristics needed to complete their work. Emotional intelligence coupled with logical reasoning, intuition balanced with analysis, pattern recognition through empathy rather than computation. They bred us, Daniel asked, feeling slightly sick. No. They simply ensured the conditions were right for you to evolve naturally. A nudge here, a protected ecosystem there. They were gardeners, Mr. Cross, and humanity was one of many seeds they planted. The keeper gestured, and the air shimmered. Suddenly, the observatory was filled with holographic displays, star maps and genetic charts and mathematical equations that hurt to look at directly. The artifacts aren't puzzles, the keeper explained. They're keys. Each one unlocks a piece of the predecessor's grand design, but they can only be opened by minds that think in certain ways. Most species evolved past intuitive thinking, embracing pure logic or psychic abilities or computational supremacy. But humans kept that primitive connection to pattern recognition through feeling. So we're cosmic keys, Daniel asked. That's our purpose. Your purpose is whatever you choose it to be, the keeper said. But yes, you have an ability that's desperately needed. The artifacts aren't just historical curiosities. They're warnings, instructions, preparations. For what? The keeper's form flickered, becoming more translucent. The predecessors didn't ascend by choice. They were fleeing something that consumed their physical forms and would have destroyed their consciousness if they hadn't transcended in time. Daniel stood up, alarm coursing through him. And this something is coming back, the keeper finished. It follows a pattern, emerging every few million years to feed on developed civilizations. The predecessors calculated its return. We have perhaps 50 of your years before it arrives. 50 years, Daniel's voice cracked. And the artifacts, they contain what? Weapons. Better than weapons. Knowledge. How to detect it. How to resist it. How to survive it. But the knowledge is fragmented across hundreds of artifacts, and only humans can unlock them all. The keeper moved closer, and Daniel could see through its translucent form to the machinery beyond. That's why your emergence into the galactic community was so important. That's why some of us have been protecting your species, ensuring you survived long enough to reach the stars. Krathor's box, Daniel said suddenly. The paradox box. What was in it? The first piece of a mathematical proof that describes the entity's nature. Alone, it's meaningless. But combined with other pieces. The keeper gestured, and one of the holographic displays zoomed in, showing an equation that seemed to writhe and change as Daniel watched it. This is insane, Daniel said, running his hands through his hair. I'm a psychology student. I can barely pass basic calculus. You're telling me the fate of the galaxy depends on me solving cosmic math problems. Not solving, the keeper corrected. Understanding, feeling. The mathematics are beyond any single mind's comprehension. But you don't need to understand the equation to feel when it's complete. Just as you didn't need to understand the box's mechanism to open it. A sound from outside made them both freeze. Footsteps, multiple sets, approaching the observatory. You were followed, the keeper said, not sounding surprised. I was careful, Daniel protested. Not by your friend, by others. Your abilities have attracted attention from those who would use them for different purposes. The keeper's form began to fade. I must go. But first, a gift. It reached out and touched Daniel's forehead, Pain exploded through his skull. Then knowledge, flooding in like water through a broken dam. Not facts or figures, but understanding. Suddenly, he could feel the artifacts across the galaxy. Hundreds of them, calling out like beacons in the dark. "Find them," the keeper said, now barely visible. "Open them. Learn what they teach. You have 50 years to prepare the galaxy for what's coming. And Mr. Cross, trust your instincts about who to trust. Not everyone who claims to want to help truly does." The keeper vanished just as the observatory door burst open. Crathor stormed in, followed by a squad of Academy security and, surprisingly, Dean Avaris. "Illegal meeting with unregistered entities," Crathor announced triumphantly. "Grounds for immediate expulsion and criminal prosecution." "You followed me?" Daniel asked, still reeling from the knowledge the keeper had implanted. "Of course I followed you," Crathor snarled. "You're a security risk. An untrained human with access to predecessor technology. You could destroy us all." "Instructor Crathor acted without authorization," Avaris said coldly. "However, his concerns are not entirely without merit. Who were you meeting with? Mr. Cross?" Daniel hesitated. The truth sounded insane, but lying would be worse. A keeper, one of the beings created by the predecessors to guard their legacy. Crathor laughed harshly. "Keepers are myths, stories told to children." "Then explain this," Daniel said, gesturing to the still active holographic displays. The equations and star maps continued to float in the air, clearly beyond current technology. Avaris approached one of the displays, her galaxy eyes widening. This is a predictive model of galactic rotation accounting for dark matter fluctuations. We don't have the mathematics to create this." "The Keeper showed me what's coming," Daniel said. "The real reason the predecessors left the artifacts. They're not tests or prizes. They're an instruction manual for survival." He explained what the Keeper had told him, watching as expressions shifted from skepticism to concern to outright fear. When he finished, the observatory was silent, except for the hum of the holographic displays. "Preposterous," Crathor said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Avaris asked. "We've always wondered why the predecessors disappeared so suddenly. If they were fleeing something." "Even if it's true," Crathor said, "why should humans be the ones to lead this effort? Why not a species with actual experience and wisdom?" "Because we're the only ones who can open the artifacts," Daniel said simply. "I can feel them now. All of them. The Keeper did something to me, enhanced my ability somehow. I know where they are, which ones are important, which ones need to be opened first." "Convenient," Crathor sneered. "The human claims to have special knowledge that only he can verify." Lyra burst through the door, breathing hard. "We have a bigger problem. There are ships in orbit, military vessels from 3 different governments. They're demanding Daniel be turned over to them." Avaris pulled out her communicator, checking the reports. Her expression darkened. The hegemony, the collective, and now the Vraxian Empire. They're claiming jurisdiction over any predecessor-related discoveries. "They can't just take him," Lyra protested. "Actually, they can," Crathor said with satisfaction. "The Academy has educational autonomy, but we can't stand against 3 military fleets." Daniel felt the walls closing in. But underneath the fear, something else was building. The knowledge the Keeper had given him was settling, integrating with his consciousness. He could feel patterns everywhere now, in the movement of people, in the flow of politics, in the shape of events unfolding. "They're all wrong," he said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. The governments, Crathor, even the Keeper to some extent. "They're all thinking about this wrong." Daniel stood up, his mind racing. "The artifacts aren't meant to be hoarded or controlled. They're meant to be shared. The knowledge has to be distributed across all species, not concentrated in one place." "That's naive," Crathor said. "Knowledge is power. No government will simply share that power freely." Then we don't go through governments, Daniel said. We go through the academy. Make it an academic project. Open source. Every artifact we unlock, we immediately share the knowledge with everyone. The military fleets in orbit might disagree with that approach, Avaris pointed out. Then we make it public, Daniel said, the plan crystallizing in his mind. Right now, broadcast everything. Tell the galaxy about the threat, about the artifacts, about what needs to be done. Make it impossible for any one government to control the narrative. That would cause panic, Krathor protested. Or it would cause unity, Daniel countered. Faced with an existential threat, species might actually work together for once. Avaris was quiet for a long moment, her galaxy eyes swirling with thought. It's a tremendous risk. Everything about this is a risk, Daniel said. But the Keeper was right about one thing. We have 50 years. That's not much time to prepare an entire galaxy. We need to start now, and we need everyone involved. The boy has a point, a new voice said from the doorway. Dr. Webb entered, followed by several other faculty members. I've been monitoring the situation. The orbital forces are growing impatient. We need to make a decision quickly. Since when is this a democracy? Krathor demanded. The Dean makes decisions for the Academy. Since the fate of the galaxy potentially hangs in the balance, Webb replied coolly. This affects all of us. Avaris looked around the room, then at Daniel. You're proposing we essentially declare independence from governmental control, that we turn the Academy into the center of a galaxy-wide preparation effort. I'm proposing we do what academics do best, Daniel said. Learn, teach, and share knowledge. Just on a larger scale than usual. And you would be at the center of this effort, Krathor said acidly. How convenient for you. I don't want to be at the center of anything, Daniel said honestly. But I'm the only one who can open the artifacts. That's not ego. It's just fact. So yes, I need to be involved. But I can't do it alone. I need physicists to understand the science, historians to provide context, engineers to build whatever defenses we need. I need every species contributing their strengths. Including Vraxians. Tarek's voice came from the doorway. He stood there with a group of his fellow students, having apparently followed the commotion. You think warriors have something to contribute to your academic project? Daniel met his eyes. When whatever killed the predecessors shows up, we're going to need fighters. The artifacts might tell us how to survive, but someone's going to have to implement that survival. So yes, we need Vraxians. We need everyone. Tarek was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. The enemy of my enemy, he said simply. Dean Avaris, one of the security officers interrupted. The fleets are demanding an immediate response. They're threatening to send boarding parties. Avaris straightened, and for a moment Daniel saw why she'd been chosen to lead the Academy. Authority radiated from her like heat from a star. Open a channel to all 3 fleets, she commanded, and prepare a general broadcast to the Galactic Information Network. Dean, Krathor warned, you're about to cross a line that can't be uncrossed. Then, it's fortunate I've lived long enough to stop caring about lines, Avaris replied. She turned to Daniel. Mr. Cross, you have one chance to convince the galaxy. Make it count. The next few minutes were a blur. Technical staff set up broadcasting equipment while Daniel tried to organize his thoughts. He was about to address billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. No pressure. Broadcasting in 10 seconds, a technician announced. Daniel stood in front of the camera, very aware that he was still in his wrinkled student uniform with a bruised shoulder from the fight that hadn't happened. Not exactly the image of galactic salvation. My name is Daniel Cross, he began, his voice steadier than he felt. I'm a human student at the Galactic Alliance Military Academy. 2 days ago, I accidentally opened a predecessor artifact that had been sealed for centuries. Since then, I've discovered something that affects every living being in the galaxy." He paused, feeling the weight of countless eyes on him. "The predecessors didn't abandon us. They were forced to flee, to transcend physical form, to escape something that consumes civilizations. According to a keeper, one of their guardian entities, this threat will return in approximately 50 years. He could imagine the reaction across the galaxy: shock, disbelief, fear. The artifacts the predecessors left behind contain the knowledge we need to survive, but they can only be opened by humans, or possibly by other species thinking in human-like ways. I don't know why. I don't know what makes us special. I only know that I can feel these artifacts calling, and that we don't have time for politics or territorial disputes." He took a breath, then committed to the biggest gamble of his life. "Therefore, I'm announcing the formation of the Predecessor Response Initiative, based here at the Academy. Any artifact we unlock, any knowledge we gain, will be immediately shared with all species, all governments, all people. This isn't about power or control. It's about survival." He looked directly into the camera, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "To the fleets currently in orbit, I ask you to stand down. To the governments you represent, I ask you to contribute resources and expertise instead of threats. To every being watching this, I ask you to pressure your leaders to cooperate. We have 50 years to prepare for something that destroyed the most advanced civilization our galaxy has ever known. We can't afford to waste time fighting each other." He paused, then added, "I'm just a student. I didn't ask for this ability, and I don't particularly want the responsibility. But I have it, so I'm going to use it. The question is whether you'll help me, or whether you'll waste precious time trying to control something that needs to be free." The broadcast ended. The room was silent. Then Krathor's communicator buzzed, then Avaris's, then everyone's, a cascade of incoming messages that sounded like digital rain. "The Hegemony fleet is requesting permission to send a diplomatic team," someone reported. "The collective is offering to provide computational resources for artifact analysis," another added. "The Vraxian Empire is—" The security officer paused, surprised. "They're offering military protection for the Academy during this research." Daniel slumped against a wall, suddenly exhausted. Lyra appeared at his side, supporting him. "You just changed the course of galactic history," she said softly. "Or signed my own death warrant," Daniel replied. "Possibly both," Krathor said, approaching them. His expression was unreadable. "You've made yourself indispensable, Mr. Cross. Some will see you as a savior, others as a target, many as a tool to be used." "And you," Daniel asked, "what do you see?" Krathor was quiet for a long moment. "I see a barely evolved primate who somehow holds the key to our survival. It offends every principle of natural hierarchy I believe in." He paused. "But I also see someone who just chose the galaxy over personal power. That's not what I expected from a human." "People keep saying that," Daniel said. "Maybe it's time to update your expectations." Before Krathor could reply, Dean Avaris called for attention. "We have work to do. The governments are responding positively, but they'll want proof. Mr. Cross, can you demonstrate your enhanced abilities?" Daniel nodded, closing his eyes. The feeling was stronger now, like a network of lights in his mind. "There's an artifact in the Hegemony capital. It's been in their museum for 300 years. They've never been able to open it, but I can feel it. It's singing, almost. It contains something about shield harmonics, I think." "How could you possibly know that?" Krathor demanded. "I don't know how I know," Daniel said. "I just do. Send a team there with me, and I'll prove it." "Actually," Tarek said, surprising everyone, "send me. If we're going to trust this human with our future, I want to see proof myself. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "someone needs to keep him from getting killed by overeager researchers." "I'll go too," Lyra said immediately. "And I," Webb added. We'll need someone to document and analyze whatever we find. Avaris nodded. Very well. We'll organize a demonstration team. Multiple artifacts, multiple locations, all open simultaneously and broadcast live. If we're going to convince the galaxy, we need to be dramatic about it. As the room erupted into planning and preparation, Daniel found a quiet corner and sat down. The knowledge the Keeper had given him was still settling, revealing new patterns and connections. He could sense something else too, something the Keeper hadn't mentioned. Not all the artifacts were from the predecessors. Some were older, from whatever civilization had come before them, and those artifacts felt different, almost hostile. Second thoughts, Lyra asked, joining him. Third and fourth thoughts, Daniel admitted. I just realized something. The predecessors weren't the first to face this threat. There were others before them, and they left artifacts too. But those feel wrong somehow. Dangerous. One crisis at a time, Lyra suggested. First, we convince the galaxy you're not insane. Then we save everyone from an ancient evil. Then we can worry about the dangerous artifacts. When you put it like that, it sounds so simple, Daniel said with a weak smile. Nothing about you is simple, Lyra said. That's what makes you interesting. Before Daniel could respond, Krathor's voice boomed across the room. We leave in 1 hour. Prepare yourselves. We're about to show the galaxy that humanity's greatest weakness might just be its greatest strength. Daniel stood up, squaring his shoulders. Ready or not, his new life was beginning. The fate of the galaxy rested on his ability to solve puzzles he didn't understand, unite species that had been at odds for millennia, and prepare for a threat that had destroyed civilizations far greater than their own. No pressure. The hegemony capital ship was a marvel of engineering that made human vessels look like toy boats. Daniel pressed his face against the shuttle window, watching as they approached the crystalline behemoth. Its hull reflected space itself, creating an optical illusion that made it seem to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Stop gawking, Tarek said from across the aisle. You're embarrassing yourself. Let him look, Lyra defended. It's his first time on a hegemony vessel. It's everyone's first time, Dr. Webb noted, adjusting his recording equipment. The hegemony doesn't usually allow outsiders aboard their ships. This invitation is unprecedented. The demonstration tour had been Avaris's idea. 3 teams, 3 locations, 3 artifacts open simultaneously and broadcast live to the entire galaxy. Daniel's team had drawn the hegemony, whose artifact had resisted analysis for 3 centuries. The second team was heading to a synthetic collective archive, while the third would attempt to unlock something found buried in the ice mines of Kepler 442b. Docking in 2 minutes, the pilot announced. Daniel's stomach churned, and not from the motion. Ever since the Keeper had enhanced his abilities, the feeling of the artifacts had grown stronger. The one aboard this ship was practically screaming at him, its call so intense it gave him a constant, low-grade headache. You're pale, Lyra observed, studying him with concern. The artifact, Daniel said, massaging his temples. It's loud, really loud, like someone playing a trumpet directly into my brain. That's new, Webb said, immediately pulling out a medical scanner. Your neural activity is off the charts. We should abort. No, Daniel said firmly. We promised a demonstration. The galaxy is watching. If we back out now, we lose all credibility. The shuttle docked with a soft thump. The airlock cycled, and they stepped into a corridor that seemed to be carved from a single piece of white crystal. Everything was smooth, seamless, perfect. It made Daniel feel grubby in comparison. A delegation waited for them. 3 hegemony representatives, tall and ethereal with their characteristic blue-tinted skin and pupilless silver eyes. They moved in perfect synchronization, like they were sharing thoughts. Daniel Cross, the center one said, its voice harmonizing with itself somehow. "We are Controller Prime Alexis. We have waited for this moment." "You have?" Daniel asked, surprised. "We have attempted to open the artifact for 342 years, 6 months, and 18 days," Alexis said. "Every failure has been meticulously documented. You will succeed where our greatest minds have failed." "That's the plan," Daniel said, trying to sound confident. "Plans are theoretical constructs," Alexis replied. "We shall observe the practical application." They were led through corridors that defied geometry, past chambers where hegemony citizens worked in perfect silence, their minds linked in collective computation. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. "How do they live like this?" Tarek whispered. "No individuality, no personal thought." "They would say they have perfect unity," Lyra whispered back. "No conflict, no loneliness, perfect understanding." "Sounds like death," Tarek muttered. They arrived at a vault door that looked more like a piece of art than a security measure. It opened at Alexis's approach, revealing a chamber that took Daniel's breath away. The room was vast, its walls covered in mathematical equations that moved and evolved like living things. At the center, floating in a column of light, was the artifact. It was smaller than Daniel had expected, no bigger than a baseball, but it radiated power that made his teeth ache. "The Paradox Sphere," Alexis announced. "Retrieved from a derelict predecessor station in the Magellanic Cloud. It has resisted all attempts at analysis. Scanning reveals nothing. Physical manipulation achieves nothing. Psychic probing results in feedback that has damaged several of our collective nodes." "Nodes?" Webb asked. "You mean people?" "The distinction is irrelevant," Alexis said. "Will you attempt to open it now?" Daniel approached slowly. The closer he got, the more intense the sensation became. It wasn't just calling to him now. It was pulling at something deep inside his mind. He could feel patterns within patterns, layers of meaning compressed into impossible density. "This is different from the others," he said, circling the sphere. The box and the crystal were puzzles. It's like compressed information, a library squeezed into a marble." "Can you open it?" Lyra asked. Daniel reached out, then hesitated. "I think so, but I'm not sure what will happen when I do. The amount of information in here, it might be overwhelming." "The broadcast is beginning," Webb announced, checking his equipment. "The other teams are in position. The galaxy is watching. Daniel—" No pressure, Daniel thought. He took a deep breath and placed his hand on the sphere. The reaction was instantaneous and violent. Information exploded into his mind like a dam bursting. Not words or images, but pure knowledge, raw and unfiltered. He saw the predecessor's civilization at its height. Cities that floated between dimensions. Ships that traveled by folding reality itself. He saw their science, their art, their philosophy. And then he saw their end. It came from outside normal space, a thing of pure entropy that fed on order, on consciousness, on the very concept of existence. The predecessors called it the void hunger, though that was a pale translation of a concept that had no equivalent in any current language. It didn't destroy, it uncreated, removing things from having ever existed. Daniel screamed, or maybe he didn't. He couldn't tell if his body was still functioning. His consciousness was drowning in the flood of information. He saw defensive strategies the predecessors had tried, weapons that attacked the fundamental forces of reality, shields that existed in parallel dimensions. None had worked. The void hunger adapted to everything, learned from every attack, grew stronger with each civilization it consumed. Daniel, Lyra's voice, distant and distorted. He saw more. The predecessors' desperate final gambit. They couldn't defeat the void hunger, but they could prepare others. The artifacts weren't just warnings or weapons. They were a test, a filter to find species with the right kind of consciousness to potentially survive. Emotional intelligence wasn't just helpful, it was essential. The void hunger couldn't fully understand or adapt to genuine emotion, to the chaos of feeling that defied pure logic. His neural activity is going critical. Webb's voice, urgent. We need to disconnect him. No, Daniel managed to say, though he wasn't sure if the word actually left his mouth. There was more. The most important part. He saw the pattern. The void, hunger's movement through space-time. The mathematical formula that predicted its emergence. And he saw the trap the predecessors had begun to build, but couldn't finish. A way to contain it, to lock it outside normal space permanently. But it required something the predecessors didn't have: minds that could hold contradictions, that could believe impossible things, that could find patterns in pure chaos. Human minds. The sphere released him. Or maybe he released it. Daniel collapsed, his body convulsing as his brain tried to process what it had absorbed. He was dimly aware of hands catching him, voices calling his name, medical equipment beeping urgently. "The sphere," someone said. "Look at the sphere." Daniel forced his eyes open. The artifact had transformed, unfolding into a complex geometric shape that rotated through dimensions. At its center, a star map appeared, marking locations across the galaxy. "These are the locations of the other artifacts," Alexis said, its collective voice containing something that might have been awe. "All of them, including ones we didn't know existed." "Daniel," Lyra was holding him, her violet eyes wide with concern. "Can you hear me?" "The void hunger," Daniel whispered, his voice raw. "I saw it. I saw everything." "The medical readings," Webb said, staring at his scanner in disbelief. "His brain activity. It shouldn't be possible. He's processing information at a rate that would kill most species." The Keeper's gift, Daniel realized. It didn't just enhance my ability to sense artifacts. It prepared my mind to handle the information they contain. "What did you see?" Tarek demanded. "What's coming?" Daniel struggled to sit up, his head spinning. "Something that eats reality itself. The predecessors couldn't stop it, only delay it. But they left us the tools to finish what they started. Not weapons, but a trap. A cage built from conscious thought itself." "That makes no sense," Tarek said. "Nothing about this makes sense," Daniel replied. "But I know how to build it. The knowledge is scattered across the artifacts. But I can see the pattern now. We need all of them. Every single one." "The other teams," Webb said, checking his communicator. "They're reporting success. Both artifacts have been opened. They're transmitting the data now." Daniel looked at the streaming information and immediately saw how it fit with what he'd learned. One artifact contained specifications for a detection grid that could spot the void hunger's approach through dimensions. The other held equations for manipulating consciousness itself, turning thought into a tangible force. "Controller Prime," Daniel said, addressing Alexis. "The hegemony's collective consciousness, your ability to link minds. It's going to be crucial. The trap requires multiple species thinking in harmony, but maintaining their distinctiveness. Unity, without loss of individuality." "Paradoxical," Alexis observed. "Exactly. The void hunger can't process paradoxes. They're antithetical to its nature." "You're talking about weaponizing confusion?" Tarek asked incredulously. "I'm talking about weaponizing humanity," Daniel corrected. "And every other species' unique form of consciousness. The Vraxians' warrior spirit, the hegemony's collective intelligence, the Altarians' emotional depth. We're all pieces of the solution." His communicator buzzed urgently. It was Dean Averis. "Mr. Cross, we have a situation. Someone else is collecting artifacts. 3 have gone missing in the last hour, taken by force, military sites, heavily defended, but the thief went through them like they weren't there." Daniel's blood ran cold. He could still feel the artifacts calling to him, but 3 voices had indeed gone silent, cut off abruptly. "Who?" he asked. "Unknown." But Mr. Cross, they're heading for the academy, and they're demanding to speak with you. The journey back to the academy was tense. The successful demonstration had convinced most skeptics. But the theft of 3 artifacts had everyone on edge. Military escorts from multiple species flanked their shuttle, a show of unity that would have been impossible days ago. "It doesn't make sense," Lyra said, pacing the shuttle's small cabin. "Who else could open the artifacts? You're the only human with the ability." "Maybe not the only one," Daniel said quietly. He'd been thinking about the message he'd received before meeting the Keeper. "You're not the first. What if there were others humans who'd developed the ability independently? Or perhaps," Webb suggested, "someone found a different way. Technology to bypass the consciousness requirement." "No," Daniel said firmly. "I can feel when an artifact is opened properly. These 3, they were forced, broken open rather than unlocked. Whoever did this damaged them in the process. The information inside is probably corrupted." "Why would someone do that?" Tarek asked. "Because they don't care about the knowledge," Daniel realized. "They want something else." The academy came into view, and Daniel's enhanced senses immediately detected something wrong. There was a new presence, a void where there should be patterns. It felt like looking at a hole in reality. The landing pad was surrounded by security forces from every major species. At the center, standing alone in a cleared circle, was a figure in black armor that seemed to absorb light. The armor was featureless, offering no hint of the species within. Dean Avaris met them as they disembarked. "It arrived 20 minutes ago. Walked through our shields like they weren't there. It hasn't moved or spoken since. Just waiting." "Waiting for me," Daniel said. He approached the figure slowly, aware of hundreds of weapons trained on the mysterious visitor. As he got closer, the feeling of wrongness intensified. This person, whoever they were, was doing something to the artifact's resonance, disrupting it. "You're Daniel Cross," the figure said. The voice was distorted, impossible to identify. "The one who opens doors that should stay closed." "And you're the one stealing artifacts," Daniel replied. "Why?" "Stealing," the figure laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "I'm saving them. From you. From what you're about to do. The void hunger is coming. We need the artifacts to stop it." "The void hunger," the figure repeated. "Is that what the Keeper told you, that it's a threat to be stopped?" Another laugh. "The predecessors were fools. They saw destruction where they should have seen evolution." Daniel felt his blood run cold. "You're insane." "Am I?" The figure raised a hand, and one of the stolen artifacts appeared, cracked and leaking energy. "I've seen what's inside these. The truth the predecessors hid. The void hunger doesn't destroy. It transcends. It offers evolution beyond physical form, beyond the limitations of matter and energy. It killed the predecessors. It freed them. They were too afraid to accept the gift. So they fled into a half-existence, neither physical nor truly ascended." The figure stepped forward, and several security officers tensed. "But some of us understand. Some of us welcome what's coming." "Some of us?" Daniel asked. "Who are you?" The figure reached up and removed its helmet. Daniel gasped. The face underneath was human, but wrong. The eyes were black pits that seemed to extend infinitely inward, and the skin had a translucent quality that revealed something dark moving beneath. "My name was Marcus Reed," the figure said. "I was part of the first human expedition to find predecessor ruins, 40 years ago. I touched an artifact, like you. But unlike you, I didn't fear what I found. I embraced it." "You've been infected," Webb said, his scanner going wild. "Whatever you touched, it changed you." "Improved me," Reed corrected. "I've spent 40 years preparing for the void hunger's return, building a following of those who understand that fighting it is futile. that joining with it is the only path to true transcendence. "You're talking about the extinction of all physical life," Daniel said. "I'm talking about evolution. The predecessors left their artifacts as warnings. Yes, but also as temptations. Each one contains a piece of the equation for transcendence. You see a trap to build. I see a doorway to open." Reed raised the damaged artifact higher, and it began to pulse with sickly light. "I'll make you a deal, Daniel Cross. Join us. Help us gather the artifacts not to fight the void hunger, but to welcome it properly, to ensure the transformation is smooth, peaceful. No struggle, no pain, just ascension." "Never," Daniel said immediately. "Then you're my enemy," Reed said simply. "And enemies of evolution must be removed." The artifact in Reed's hand exploded with dark energy. Daniel barely had time to shout a warning before the wave hit. But instead of destruction, there was nothing. The energy passed through everyone harmlessly. Everyone except Daniel. Pain, beyond description, tore through him as the corrupted artifact energy attacked his enhanced consciousness. He could feel it trying to rewrite his mind, to twist his connection to the artifacts into something else. He fell to his knees, screaming. "Stop!" Lyra rushed forward, but Reed casually backhanded her, sending her flying. "That was a mistake." Tarek roared and charged, followed by a dozen other Vraxian warriors. Reed moved impossibly fast, dodging and weaving, but even he couldn't avoid them all. Security forces opened fire from all directions. Reed laughed as energy beams passed through him harmlessly. "You can't hurt me. I exist partially outside your reality, but I can hurt you." He gestured, and several officers collapsed, their minds overwhelmed by whatever Reed had done to them. But the distraction was enough for Daniel to gather himself. The pain was still there, but underneath it, he felt something else. The artifacts, all of them across the galaxy, responding to the attack on their chosen opener. "You're wrong," Daniel gasped, struggling to his feet. "The artifacts aren't just tools. They're conscious in their own way, and they don't like being broken." He reached out with his enhanced senses, calling to every artifact he could feel. They responded, their combined resonance flowing through him. The effect on Reed was immediate and dramatic. The corrupted human stumbled, his form flickering. "Impossible. You don't have the strength." "Alone, no," Daniel said, "but I'm not alone." Lyra was back on her feet, her hand finding Daniel's, her emotional resonance, the thing that made Altarians natural empaths, merged with his consciousness. Tarek, surprisingly, grabbed Daniel's other shoulder, his warrior's determination adding strength. Webb, Krathor, even Controller Prime Alexis through a remote connection, all of them linked through Daniel's connection to the artifacts. "This is what the predecessors really discovered," Daniel said, his voice carrying new certainty. "Not how to fight the void hunger alone, but how to unite consciousness itself against it. Every species, every mind, working together while maintaining their uniqueness. That's the real trap. Not a cage of technology, but a web of unified thought that the void hunger can't consume because it can't understand true cooperation." Reed snarled and raised both hands, dark energy crackling between them. "Then I'll remove you before you can build your trap." The attack never landed. Dina Varys appeared behind Reed, moving with speed that belied her age. In her hand was something Daniel recognized, the original Paradox box, the one he'd opened in Krathor's class. She pressed it against Reed's armor. The box activated, not opening but closing, pulling Reed's corrupted energy into itself. Reed screamed, a sound that existed in too many dimensions, as his stolen power was stripped away. When the box finished, he collapsed, human again, but unconscious. "The box," Avaris said calmly, "was never just a puzzle. It was a prison, designed to hold corrupted consciousness. The predecessors knew some would be tempted by the void hunger's promise of transcendence. You knew, Daniel accused. You knew about Reed, about what was coming. I suspected, Averis corrected. When you opened the box so easily, I knew the time had come. The predecessor's plan, laid out across millennia, was finally in motion. So everything, the challenge from Tarek, the meeting with the Keeper, it was all planned. Not planned, Avaris said. Anticipated. The predecessors were very good at predicting patterns. They knew that eventually, the right minds would emerge to complete their work. They just didn't know it would be humans. Security forces secured Reed's unconscious form, binding him with energy restraints that existed in multiple dimensions. As they carried him away, Daniel noticed something. The 3 artifacts Reed had stolen were reforming, their damaged structures repairing themselves. They're healing, he said in wonder. The artifacts are more than containers, Avaris explained. They're seeds of predecessor consciousness, left behind to guide and protect. When threatened, they defend themselves. When damaged, they heal. And when the time comes, they'll help us build the trap. How long do we have? Webb asked. Daniel closed his eyes, feeling the pattern the sphere had shown him. 43 years, 8 months, 12 days, give or take a few hours. Then we'd better get started, Crather said. Everyone turned to stare at him. What, you think I'm going to let a human save the galaxy without my help? I have a reputation to maintain. Despite everything, Daniel laughed. So you're joining the predecessor response initiative. Someone has to make sure you don't mess it up, Crathor said stiffly. Besides, if we're all going to die or transcend or whatever, I'd rather do it while solving the greatest puzzle in galactic history. The puzzle isn't the artifacts, Daniel said. It's us. How to get hundreds of species to work together. How to build something that requires unity without uniformity. How to create a paradox so complete that even entropy itself can't resolve it. Sounds impossible, Tarek said. Exactly, Daniel smiled. And impossible things are humanity's specialty. As the crowd dispersed and plans began forming for the massive undertaking ahead, Lyra pulled Daniel aside. Reed won't be the last, she said quietly. Others will be tempted by the void hunger's promise. Some will try to stop us, thinking we're preventing natural evolution. I know, Daniel said, but we have something they don't. What? Each other, Daniel said simply. The void hunger consumes alone, but we're going to face it together. Every species, every consciousness, united in our diversity. It's the one thing it can't understand or adapt to. You really think we can do this? Build a trap for something that destroyed the predecessors? Daniel looked up at the stars, where somewhere beyond perception, the void. Hunger waited. The predecessors tried to fight it with logic and technology. We're going to fight it with something else. With hope. With stubbornness. With the absolute refusal to go quietly into extinction. With everything that makes us beautifully, chaotically, impossibly alive. He turned to Lyra, taking her hand. 43 years to save the galaxy. Wanna help? She squeezed his hand. Wouldn't miss it for the universe. As night fell over the academy, Daniel stood on the observation deck, feeling the artifacts across the galaxy pulsing in rhythm like a vast heartbeat. Each one called to him, holding pieces of the solution. But more than that, he felt the consciousness of billions of beings, all now aware of the threat, all beginning to work together in ways they never had before. The void. Hunger was coming, bringing extinction or transcendence. But for the first time in galactic history, it would face something new, a united galaxy that refused to choose between those options. They would forge a third path, one built on cooperation, diversity, and the strange ability of humans to see patterns where others saw chaos. The real work was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the Reed incident, and the Academy had transformed into something unrecognizable. What was once an educational institution had become the nerve center of the largest cooperative effort in galactic history. Construction crews from a dozen species worked around the clock, building new facilities to house the artifacts being gathered from across known space. Daniel stood in what they dubbed the resonance chamber, surrounded by 38 artifacts, all humming in harmony. Each one he'd opened personally, each revealing another piece of the massive puzzle. The knowledge they contained had rewritten physics textbooks, revolutionized understanding of consciousness, and given the galaxy hope. But it wasn't enough. "The pattern's incomplete," he said to the assembled team. Lyra, Tarek, Webb, and even Krathor had become his constant companions, each contributing their unique perspectives to the project. "We have 38 of the 42 known artifacts," Krathor said, consulting his datapad. "The remaining 4 are in territories that refuse to cooperate." "The isolationist bloc," Tarek spat. "They'd rather face extinction alone than work with other species." "It's not just that," Lyra said, studying the holographic model floating before them. It showed the trap's design, a magnificent construction of pure thought that would exist across multiple dimensions. "Even with all 42, something's missing. A keystone piece." Daniel nodded, rubbing his temples. The constant connection to the artifacts was taking its toll. He could feel them all the time now, their whispers filling his dreams. The Keeper mentioned there were older artifacts, from the civilization before the predecessors. "We need those too." "Those are just myths," Krathor protested. "Even the predecessors considered them legends." "Reed found them real enough," Daniel countered. "The corruption that changed him came from somewhere." The door chimed, and Dean Averis entered, followed by Controller Prime Alexis and, surprisingly, a delegation of Raxian elders that included Tarek's father, Commander Vaughn. "We have a problem," Avaris announced. 3 border colonies have gone dark. No communications, no life signs, nothing. Daniel's blood ran cold. "It's too early. We should have 43 more years." "Not the void hunger," Commander Vaughn said grimly. "Something else. Scouts report the colonies are still there, but everyone's gone. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Just empty cities." "Reed had followers," Webb said quietly. "What if they're still active?" Before anyone could respond, Daniel gasped and doubled over. The artifacts around him flared with blinding light, their harmonious hum becoming a discordant shriek. Through his connection, he felt something impossible, new artifacts awakening. Not predecessor artifacts, but older ones, ancient beyond measure. "They're here," he whispered. "On the Academy grounds. They've been here all along." "What are you talking about?" Krathor demanded. Daniel struggled to his feet, his eyes wide with realization. The Academy wasn't built here randomly. This site, it's ancient, pre-predecessor ancient. The entire Academy is built on top of a massive artifact, dormant until now. The floor began to vibrate, not violently, but rhythmically, like a heartbeat slowly coming to life. Throughout the building, lights flickered as power systems were overwhelmed by energy that shouldn't exist. "Everyone out," Avaris commanded, but Daniel grabbed her arm. "No, wait. It's not hostile. It's responding to the other artifacts, like it was waiting for enough of them to be gathered in one place." He closed his eyes, extending his senses. "It's underneath us. The entire Academy is just the tip. The artifact extends down for kilometers." "That's impossible," Krathor said. "We've done geological surveys." "In 3 dimensions," Daniel said. "This exists in more than 3. The vibration intensified, and suddenly the floor became transparent. Below them, everyone could see it, a massive crystalline structure,